webinar. I see people are already putting their names and where they're from in the chat, which is wonderful. So please keep doing that so we know who's joining, and so people know who we all have here. So please keep putting that in the chat. As we go through the webinars, please use the question and answer token box to put your questions, and we can answer them as we go. Thank you. Well, welcome to the Marine Biodiversity Networking Fridays webinar. We're going to talk about what we call essential variables today, and particularly those that we use for biology and ecosystems. So that's related to the GOOS BioEco panel. We'll explain what these words all mean. We're going to have two speakers. I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction to this whole topic. But we're going to have, we really have the pleasure of having Audrey Darnaud and Elizabeth Lawrence with us. And I'll tell you a little bit about them. Dr. Audrey Darnaud is a research scientist at CNRS and at Marbec in Montpellier, France. And she's originally trained in fish ecology and has over 25 years of research experience studying marine ecosystems and species in various parts of the world. Primarily using natural or geochemical markers. She studies the life history and population structure of various exploited fish, coastal food web functioning, and habitat connectivity, and she's an expert in connectivity. Audrey is one of the champions of understanding how this functional connectivity and its applications for management can be used throughout the world. So we are honored to have Audrey with us, and she's one of the co-chairs of the Biology and Ecosystems Expert Panel of the Global Ocean Observing System, GOOS, of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission at UNESCO. The other co-chair is Clive McMahon. The second speaker is going to be Dr. Elizabeth Lawrence. We have an honor to have her with us here. She's also from the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission at UNESCO, where she is project officer at the project office for the International Oceanographic Data and Information Exchange, or IODE. Now, the Ocean Biodiversity Information System lives within IODE at the IOC-UNESCO, and Elizabeth is the Capacity Development Officer for OBIS. She works with the Horizon Europe project BioEco Ocean as well, where she's involved in capacity development, data management, and developing tools to facilitate management of data and metadata. Working with OBIS specifically, but also through BioEco Ocean, she creates, maintains, and updates training resources, and she's going to talk to us about those resources. This includes the OBIS manual, the Ocean Teacher Global Academy, training courses for OBIS, and videos that explain data formatting and control vocabulary for the OBIS YouTube channel. And throughout this webinar, you're going to hear about why it's so important for us to work as a community to start using these standards in data formatting. So together, they will give us this introduction to GOOS Biology and Ecosystems Essential Ocean Variables or what we call BioEco EOVs, and data management. But first, let me give you a little bit of the context for what we call these essential ocean variables and essential biodiversity variables. There's a lot of questions in the community about when you use one or when you use the other one. So maybe this webinar today will help explain some of that. So if you look at this graph, it's a kind of an infinite loop. But if you start at the left-hand side where you see requirements for international, regional, national information about biodiversity or anything about any environmental variable, including life, that the Global Ocean Observing System is helping collect those requirements and channel them to scientists so that we can collect the data and put it back to the public in a way that the public can use them to make decisions. And that's what this loop represents. So GOOS collects the requirements. Audrey is going to explain the process by which these requirements are coded and put out, and invite you all to comment on them. There are several networks in the community. GOOS is one, and the Marine Biodiversity Observation Network is another network of people trying to work together to understand how to best collect data in a homogenized way so that we can address local problems, but also in a way that we can aggregate the data to regional and international indicators, because otherwise it's very difficult to understand what's happening at the larger scale and how the larger scales interact with the local scale. All of that data that all of you collect moves to OBIS and to the ODIS. These are organisms within IOC that Audrey is going to talk about and Elizabeth is going to further explain. And these measurements that we call essential ocean variables then can be aggregated into maps or trend graphics. Every time that you put this into a type of model or to try to map time series, that's what we call essential biodiversity variables. So there, you see that there's a continuum between these variables, and then it goes to the public. A little bit more detail here. We have the essential variables on the left-hand side, and there's some for the ocean, there's some for climate, there's some for biodiversity, and they all intersect with each other. So if you look at the intersection for these for biodiversity specifically, we have primary observations or raw data, or the observations that we collect in the field, or with remote sensing. And those can be moved through aggregation and models into these essential biodiversity variables. And again, these move into higher level aggregations that we call indicators, and they're used by the Convention for Biological Diversity or Sustainable Development Goals, or IPBES. So there's a similar construct for the essential climate variables. And there's actually some of these essential ocean variables for biology and ecosystems that are part of the essential climate variables. For example, plankton, both zooplankton and phytoplankton are now considered essential climate variables because there's so much interaction. The climate has an impact on them, and they impact climate. And so this feedback loop is now recognized by the GCOS, the Global Climate Observing System, and the people in the IPCC. Other essential climate variables include the habitat ones like seagrasses, microalgae, mangroves, and coral. So this is what we're going to talk about today, and I welcome now Audrey to give us the first part of her talk. So I'm going to stop sharing here.
Thank you, Frank. So I'm going to try to share my screen. So you should share it. I'm going to switch to presentation mode. Hopefully. Yeah, okay. And put the pointer. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I need to stop. It's not the first one. Sorry. And again, so now you should, do you confirm you see it in full screen, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, perfect. Okay, yeah, okay, so thanks everyone for being here. And thank you so much, Frank and Joanna, for inviting me to talk about GOOS and the BioEco EOVs today. The idea with this talk is to give you an overview of the essential ocean variables framework that was developed by the Global Ocean Observing System, GOOS, of the IOC-UNESCO to guide an unified worldwide observation on ocean biology and ecosystem, and hopefully to convince you to contribute to its improvement and its widespread adoption. So why do we need a global ocean observing system? As you know, understanding changes in the ocean is key to plan how to make positive changes at global, regional, national, and local levels, be it for climate action, blue economy development, ocean health conservation and carbon strategies, community adaptation, or weather forecast and early warnings. But the ocean is so vast, as you know, no one country can observe it effectively on its own. And moreover, all its parts are interconnected by currents, gravity, or just the movement of species. And so local actions have cascading impacts at all spatial scales, through changes in both ocean physics and biodiversity, leading to changes in ocean services. And that is why a global coordinated system for integrated ocean observation and data sharing is crucial for the safety, well-being, and prosperity of all countries. So providing it is the vision behind the creation of the Global Ocean Observing System, so GOOS, which was created in 1991 under the lead of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, or IOC-UNESCO, for those of you who don't know it yet, and with the co-sponsorship of the WMO, so the World Meteorological Organization, the UN Environmental Programme UNEP, and the International Science Council. And its mission is to lead the ocean observing community and create the partnerships required to grow a truly global, fully integrated, responsive and sustained ocean observing system to deliver the essential information that is needed for our sustainable development, our safety, well-being, and prosperity. So over the last decades, you might not know it, but GOOS has become instrumental in leading and supporting a wide community of ocean observers, including many international, regional, and national ocean observing programs, governments, UN agencies, research organizations, and individual scientists, to help them better answer societal needs at all scales, from local to global, by improving and facilitating the collection, interoperability, gathering, integration, and sharing of the key ocean data they collect worldwide. So GOOS stands between ocean observing communities and the users and beneficiaries of ocean information, trying to optimize and standardize the collection and use of ocean observation worldwide. And this is not an easy task, because hundreds of thousands of observations are collected every day by the 84 countries that contribute to GOOS. And which gathers more than 8,000 observing platforms, 30 global observing networks, and 12 active scientific communities that study marine life and ecosystem. So in fact, it is the continued efforts to coordinate their work over the past decades that gave birth to what we call the Essential Ocean Variables, or EOVs framework, which is the aim to make it easier to measure and compare ocean state from all corners of the world. And so the EOVs have been defined as the minimum set of ocean variables that is needed to assess ocean state and variability for important global phenomena, but also to provide essential data for application that supports societal benefits in three main delivery areas. So climate change, operational services like weather forecast or tsunami warning, and of course, ocean health. They were established by three different panels of experts, one for each, the main research disciplines that study the ocean. So physics and climate, biogeochemistry, and of course, biology and ecosystem. And each EOV has been thought to be defined by 3 key elements: a list of subvariables, which represent the basic measurement needed for estimating the main EOV itself. So, for example, counting sea turtles at sea for the sea turtles abundance and distribution EOV. We also have a list of supporting variables, gathering the additional measurements that are required to offer context, like measuring water temperature, for example, and a list of derived products that will encompass all the relevant outputs calculated from the previous measurement, like for the sea turtle EOV, changes in the sea turtle distribution in response to water conditions. So currently, the 3 GOOS international expert panels have agreed on a total of 36 EOVs, each representing key indicators of the ocean state, 13 for ocean physics, 8 for ocean biogeochemistry, and 12 in green here for ocean biology and ecosystem, plus 3 cross-disciplinary EOVs that include ocean sound and ocean color, which are also managed by the biology and ecosystem panel in collaboration with the other panels. So some, as Frank was explaining before, some of these EOVs constitute are also essential climate variables, so ECVs, but in fact they all together constitute the backbone for a sustained and evolving global ocean observing system, because in fact providing a standardized approach to collect and share data on these key ocean parameters using the GOOS EOVs framework allows to gather comparable knowledge from all around the world on complementary aspects of ocean states, but also resilience. So doing this makes it easier to understand ocean processes, of course, by integrating data across ocean disciplines, and also to guide decision-making to manage and protect marine environments at all scales, from local to global. And as you can see here, this already allowed GOOS to inform multi-governmental agreements and initiatives in its 3 main domains of delivery. Sorry. For example, for climate, we contributed to the Paris Agreement. In terms of operational services, there was the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, for example, and with regard to ocean health, there is the global biodiversity framework of the CBD, but also the BBNG treaty on the high seas and deep seas. So within GOOS, it's the Marine Biology and Ecosystem Panel, or the BioEco panel, that oversees the coordination of the EOVs linked to marine biodiversity, in collaboration with the 2 other panels for the 2 cross-panel EOVs, ocean color and ocean sound. And among the 12 BioEco EOVs that exist, you have 6 of them that provide information on the state of key functional groups: phytoplankton, zooplankton, fish, sea turtles, seabirds, and marine mammals, plus 2 under development currently for microbes and benthic invertebrates. And you also have 4 that allows to assess the state of key marine habitats, looking at the cover and composition of seagrass beds, microalgal canopy, mangrove, and coral reefs and coral. So in terms of governance, the BioEco panel consists of 3 panel executives, 2 co-chairs, me in France and Clive McMahon from Australia, as Frank was mentioning, and also an international project officer, Ana Lara Lopez, also based in Australia. We also have panel members, which consist of 2 co-leaders per EOV and a representative of MBON and of OBIS, all from varied countries that are spread on all the continents. And in fact, it's this international panel that is responsible for identifying the main existing monitoring initiative for all BioEco EOVs, but also for coordinating the efforts to promote the worldwide adoption of standardized common methodologies for observation and as well for open data sharing. So for this, we link with the different regions of the globe via GOOS Regional Alliance here in orange, like for example, GOOS, or associated organizations in green, like for example, the Southern Ocean Observing System, but also via national systems like FRUS from France through the GOOS national focal points in each countries, in 81 countries. As Frank was mentioning earlier, in the case of the BioEco panel, we also have formed a key alliance with MBON and with the Ocean Biodiversity Information System, OBIS, to optimize the integration and sharing of marine biodiversity observation and data. And the reason for it is that, in fact, even if GOOS was created by the IOC-UNESCO more than 30 years ago, its biology and ecosystem panel was actually the last one to be launched only 10 years ago in 2015. And so by then, OBIS was already 15 years old. And so it has already established as the main world ocean biodiversity and biogeographic data and information gateway. And meanwhile, geoborne observation on worldwide biodiversity, including at sea, already existed for more than 7 years, with MBON soon to be in charge of coordinating its marine part for the collection of the geoborne essential biodiversity variables. So in 2016, just after the BioEco panel was created, OBIS, MBON, and GOOS decided to join efforts towards a sustained coordinated global system of marine biodiversity observations. So the aim of this alliance was really to optimize marine biodiversity data integration and sharing worldwide. And for this, the GOOS BioEco panel and MBON, who have different missions, but also quite similar missions, work together to coordinate observing networks, maximize their spatial coverage, and harmonize observation and data collection between them, ensuring that marine biodiversity data is standardized, interoperable, and also managed following open and fair data principle worldwide, but also making sure that GOOS essential ocean variables, EOVs, that I've just been talking about, can be used to create and inform geoborne essential biodiversity variables, EBVs, that Frank mentioned at the beginning of the session. And so meanwhile, OBIS has been specifying the appropriate data standards for marine biodiversity, and it optimized data archiving and dissemination. So Elizabeth is going to tell you a lot more about OBIS in a few minutes, but for now, what I would like you to note is that OBIS is the natural home for all data on GOOS BioEco EOVs, because since its launch in 2000, it has grown to become the world's largest open access repository for standardized marine biodiversity data. So currently there are more than 181 million species presence records on OBIS, coming from more than 6,600 marine data sets, with more coming in every week. And you also have on OBIS other different types of measurement data, including DNA-derived data, satellite tracking and image-derived data, and also information on habitat, ecosystem, and species abundance. And what is important is that all this data, including that gathered by the GOOS BioEco observing community, is now standardized to an international data standard called Darwin Code. And this makes it both interoperable, but also easily integrable at the regional and global scale. So it can be used to inform big international assessments, as already the case, for example, for the UN World Ocean Assessment or the UNESCO State of the Ocean Report, among others. So to make sure that the ocean data can be used and shared in the best way at all levels, the GOOS panels have multiplied efforts over the last decades to produce what we call specification sheets for all 36 EOVs. And they provide a common framework for guiding and harmonizing the collection and management of all key ocean observation. And each of them was designed as a tool to standardize data collection and management that people involved both in ocean observation, and people that use ocean data can utilize to get information on each particular EOV, including references for providing background justification and protocols for its application in decision-making at varied scales, and links to useful data products. And what is important is that the EOV provide guidance on how to contribute the most appropriate and the most useful information to the system. So you can make sure it can be used to generate global assessment for each EOV, but also identify the areas or regions that require more observation. And lastly, following this guidance for each EOV also facilitates data integration across discipline, like all disciplines, so across physics, biochemistry, and biology. And this allows better understanding of the end-to-end structure, the functioning, and of course the global state of the world ocean. So the good news is that the specification sheets for the BioEco EOVs have just been updated and released. And so over the next few months, there will be webinars like this one, focused on each of them focused on 2 EOVs and their specification sheets. They will explain why each of the EOV is essential, and how to use the specification sheet as a tool to guide your data collection and management in a way that can be optimal for multiple purposes and is interoperable to allow comparing and combining data from different regions and across time. We are also currently asking for all experts on ocean observation, so all of you, to provide online feedback and input on the newly updated BioEco specification sheets. And you can find the link to the survey for this on the GOOS website, of course, or you can access it using the QR code here. The consultation is open until the 10th of August. And of course, I warmly encourage you to complete the survey for the specification sheets of your EOVs of interest, so we can make sure that they fully align with the best practice and needs of the relevant observing and end user communities worldwide. Okay, so that's it for now, at least for me. So thank you so much for your attention. If you want to know more about GOOS and its governance or activities, please visit our website at goosocean.org. And of course, I want to finish with a big thanks to the many organizations behind our EOV leads over the last 10 years, with a few examples here, who provided invaluable support and assistance in developing the observing community, but also the specification sheets for all BioEco EOVs. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. It was good. I don't see any specific questions to you. Let me see the QA.
It was so clear.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions on how the GOOS regional alliances relate to each other and to local activities. And so Steve Formel mentioned that clearly we have an alphabet soup of acronyms here, and this is part of the training that I think we all have to go through to understand this international landscape. But ultimately, the important thing is what everybody does at their local level and how that can use some of the guidelines that these international groups do, so that the data can flow and so that nations and the United Nations can track what's going on around the world. And that's what Elizabeth is going to talk about now. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you. I'll share my screen. Okay. So, as both Frank and Audrey have mentioned, I'm going to be talking about how to manage EOV data. So let's jump right on in. So if the GOOS EOV framework is to be the backbone of our global ocean observing system, then fair and open access data are the muscles that support that backbone. But what actually makes data fair? And to summarize each aspect of FAIR, starting with Findable. Findable means that we're using descriptive metadata in order that enables finding our data, so using like DOIs. And accessible means that there's very clear instructions on how to access our data, and this goes beyond just available upon request statements. Interoperable means our data can be easily combined with other data sets and is machine readable. And so this often means adhering to data standards and using controlled vocabulary whenever possible. And reusable means that our metadata is well documented enough to enable others to replicate what we've done. And there's also enough context so that way users know under what situations our data is useful and can be reused in. And we'll note that more and more journals have data accessibility policies that require us to deposit our data in open access repositories like Figshare, Zenodo, and Dryad. And while this can meet the first two aspects, findable and accessible parts of FAIR, there's usually very little requirements for the data to also adhere to a particular data standard, barring any repository-specific guidelines, of course. So this means when we deposit our data in a repository like Zenodo, our data is not automatically FAIR. It might just be FA. So this is your reminder that we don't forget about the I and the R parts of FAIR. And before I talk more about different data management practices and how to do it, I want to show some examples that really demonstrate the power of FAIR data. The first is work that OBIS has done within the PAC-MAN project. So this is the Pacific Islands Marine Bioinvasions Alert Network, where our team developed this decision tool and an alert system to detect invasive species in an area. So the tool obtains data from both OBIS as well as GBIF. And then whenever a pest species is detected in the monitored area, this sends an alert. And the metadata associated with that detection allows us to review, provide a confidence, and then that information is used to provide informed decisions on how to deal with this potential bioinvasion. So this last screenshot is showing what the tool looks like and where you can see the confidence, the risk, and the status for particular detection. Another cool example is the information we can obtain on animal movement through time and space. So this is an example here I'm showing 4 blue sharks and their movement through time and space. And this data was obtained from the Ocean Tracking Network. The link to the data set is below. And using animal identifiers in this way can be really valuable and powerful for providing information on marine spatial planning, as well as avoiding ship strikes. Related, related to this is a really exciting project that OTN is working with ANIBOS, which is the Animal-Borne Ocean Sensors, in order to provide near real time, like within 24-hour data on animal movement directly to OBIS. And if I recall, this pipeline should be set up within the next few months or so, which is very exciting to have this. It's just like weather forecasting. We'll be able to have having like real-time information on biodiversity and animal movement. And both of these projects and these examples are really only possible when the data and the metadata are effectively documented and made FAIR. So this begs the question, how do we manage our data and make it FAIR? So there are 2 digital platforms. We've already mentioned, Audrey already mentioned OBIS. And there's also ODIS, the Ocean Data and Information System, both of which are within IOC-UNESCO and are program components of the International Oceanographic Data and Information Exchange, IODE. So a little bit more background on OBIS. Building on what Audrey was saying, OBIS, we are really a global community. So there's more than 30 regional and thematic nodes that represent more than 1,000 institutions around the world. And one of the value that the OBIS community brings is through the OBIS data pipeline. So we aggregate data sources from all over, make sure that the data adheres to a minimum set of quality control, and then integrate these thousands of data sets together into one big OBIS data set, which is publicly released in order to provide reliable, actionable, and ready-to-use data. ODIS, on the other hand, instead of being a repository, is a federated system that's improving the discoverability of the ocean resources on the web using an established web architecture, or what we like to call computer language. And this helps connect all the resources on the web, similar to like this graphic here. So every dot is connected through some network. And I want to note here that when data is published to OBIS, it automatically enters this network and is also visible in ODIS. So now let's take a look at the different components of data that need to be managed. And I find rather than thinking of data as this all-encompassing or an ambiguous thing, it's easier to break it down into components, and then we can manage each of those. So the first two components are the data sets and the information about the data sets, or the metadata. So this is the information on what variables we measured, with what methods, whether we used any endorsed best practices, and importantly, what data standards are we using to make sure our data is fair, especially interoperable, like Darwin Core, which is, of course, the International Biodiversity Standard that OBIS data adheres to. And I've also noted here a list of just some minimum metadata information that we want to make sure our data contains. The next, of course, is information about the data source. So this is the data producer, and it could be an organization, an institution, a program, or so on. And as a BioEco data producer, we want to make sure we're visible in the GOOS BioEco portal. So that way others can be aware of the important work we're doing, and this could lead to potential collaboration opportunities. And also highlight gaps where maybe efforts could be focused. The next component is the information about all the people involved, making sure that's all documented so proper credit can be given. And finally, any outputs. So products, models, model outputs, software, and all of these need to be made fair. So how do we suggest managing these 5 data components? I've created this relatively simple decision tree flowchart to help guide us as a first kind of step. When we're managing the people data on people, it's relatively easy. It's just making sure that everyone involved has an ORCID ID or some other unique and stable identifier, like Ocean Expert, and as well as the organizations, and that we're using these identifiers in our metadata and our data. Then for the data sets and metadata, the first question we want to ask is, do we know where we're publishing our data so that way it will be fair? If we already do know where it's being published, or if we don't, we highly recommend considering OBIS for the biological and the BioEco data. And then when preparing data to be published to OBIS, we recommend trying to align your data with the Darwin Core standard. So using some standardized terms for your data column names. And we're also working on some EOV specific data templates. So this is in development over through the BioEco Ocean project and within OBIS to make it a bit easier to convert those into Darwin Core. But if you don't know where to start, or if you've already kind of gotten started, we recommend contacting the OBIS Secretariat or an OBIS node, and then we'll help you get over the finish line of no matter where you are in that process. And going back to the data producer and the data outputs, we want to make sure that whatever it is visible in ODIS. And if it is visible, fantastic. And if not, do you know how to make it visible? And if you don't, then we've developed this EOV metadata app that can be used to become simultaneously visible in ODIS and the BioEco portal. So this is an example of this EOV metadata tool that I've been working on. And it's very easy to use. It's a form-based, and it will output the required information. And as I mentioned, we are working on those data standardization tools. There is a QR code here for accessing it, but I will note that I'm finalizing some of the back end, so please don't rush to provide submissions. But I am very happy to receive any kind of feedback. If something doesn't make sense, something's not working, please do let me know. Or if there's extra information that's not captured. And to conclude, we at the OBIS Secretariat, this is our team, are happy to hear from you and answer any questions. Well, thank you. I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you, Elizabeth and Audrey again. There is an interesting question here, and maybe this is feedback, Audrey and Elizabeth, that you can take back to the BioEco panel. There's a question here from Romina Wild on whether the spec sheets themselves have good pointers to the actual data and how that can be more comprehensive. For example, she's looking at the fish EOV spec sheet, and she didn't find that that's linked to specific databases. So I typed my own simplistic answer is that there's no comprehensive database for any of these data sets, and that's part of the problem, is because if you're trying to do a regional map or something that you try to put your local position into context, or even if you're trying to track global changes, you have to do a lot of work over, and everybody that tries to do this work spends a lot of time just trying to fish for the data. And so this is part of the reusable issue that Elizabeth was trying to explain. So for example, for fish, you have FishBase, you have the Sea Around Us, you have the FAO databases, you have GBIF and OBIS, and there's probably many others at the national level. Some of it is shared and some of it is not shared, but maybe the spec sheets could have a little bit more information on this maze of data systems. What do you say, Audrey and Elizabeth? You're muted, Audrey.
Yeah, Audrey, you're muted. Yeah.
Audrey, you're muted.
Sorry. So I think you're correct. At the moment, there is the efforts of developing the BioEco portal interface to try to at least make all the data that has been following the specification sheets procedure visible online. But yeah, we could. I don't know why. Well, I've joined recently, so I don't know why they decided not to include this information in the specification sheets. I guess maybe because the landscape is so diverse that it might. But it's kind of a justification to the change we're trying to create here. The main problem, I think, until now was that GOOS was an IOC were not visible enough, like the Global Ocean Observing System. People were not aware of its role, at least for the biology and ecosystem data. And so, and I'm saying that because 3 years ago, I didn't even know both of them existed or were in charge of coordinating the global observation for fish, for example, because I work on fish. And so the idea now, it's kind of the moment where we launch it. So there is a good opportunity for all the community, for fish, but for coral reefs or whatever other bioeco essential ocean variable, to contribute to the specification sheet. So please take the survey and add this comment in the survey, and we will consider adding it if we think it's relevant. But the idea is to gather your input to make sure that these EOVs are as fitted as they can to match the needs of the observing communities, but also the end users. And then the idea is now that the message is simple. People have spent something like sometimes decades trying to think about the best way to observe these EOVs, measure them, manage the data and everything. It's in the specification sheet. If all of us individually through our institute or anything, we decide to follow this protocol in our observation and contribute the data to OBIS, then we are part of the Global Ocean Observing System. So to answer another question in the chat about the contact with the regions and everything, at the moment, we're also working on it within GOOS, because some countries are very active with a lot of people knowing about the GOOS focal points and interacting with them. Others are much less. And so we're trying to improve this. But one way to contribute to the Global Ocean Observing System is very simple. Please go and check the specification sheets, improve them when it's time, then follow them as much as you can, contribute your data to OBIS, and you're part of it. And if we all do that, then it's fine.
Yeah, if I can add to that, Audrey, just like as you mentioned there at the end, and I saw that Steve noted it in the chat as well. I'm just going back so I can get the wording of the question, but really to have the goal is OBIS, like all the EOV data is going to be published in OBIS and made available there. So all kinds of EOV data will be, this is the pipeline that is being built in some places already, because OBIS, even like by the CBD, was identified as the repository for biodiversity data for the ocean. But I agree that, you know, there are a lot of different data sources, and we can get all the individual, you know, like FishBase and all of these other individual repositories having data flows to OBIS, then that would make it so much more powerful.
Yeah,
but it could still be, oh yeah, go ahead, Frank.
No, good. There's some language that's so Audrey mentioned focal points. These are the people in your countries that participate and are the communications point at the national level for GOOS. There's also focal points for the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission and for UNESCO. So there's different levels of people that you can talk to, and your own countries that ideally should be aware of these things. And if you can highlight what you learn here to those focal points in your countries, everybody benefits, you know, so that the nations help implement these standards as a national policy, as a contribution to the international community. There was also a question here, Yiming Gan asked, right now there's a BioEco portal that tries to map where time series are located. These are typically time series that have collected data for more than 5 years, and whether the collection program or stations appear when you put the data into OBIS or GBIF through this IPT tool. So can you answer that, Audrey? Or right now you have to do it separately?
Well, I'm not really sure what the question was. At the moment, Elizabeth, maybe you can correct me if I'm saying things that are not totally right. But for the moment, the BioEco portal, it's online, but it's already only showing the past, so the long-term series. It's supposed to become almost real time at some point in the future. So the idea is that the next step, correct me if I'm wrong, is to try to increase the number of long-term series in it for the moment already. And then when this is working and all the bioeco data flows into OBIS in the right format and everything, the idea would be to put credit to everybody contributing, right, Elizabeth?
Yes, and I also read, I think Ming is also asking if we need to submit through that the EOV tool as well as OBIS. So to clarify, no. If you're publishing to OBIS, and the plans are to make the data in OBIS and all the information in ODIS and the BioEco portal all talk to each other, because we don't want you to have to spend a lot of time putting the same information in multiple places. The publish once, harvest many times, and so if you're publishing data to OBIS, then you shouldn't need to also publish things to the BioEco portal, but do make sure that because the BioEco portal is meant to show like the projects, what I've been calling the data producers. In many cases, it might already be visible, whether in the BioEco portal or in ODIS, especially if you have an entry in like the Ocean Expert system, then it should already be visible. Hopefully that answers your question.
I'm gonna ask another question. Laura Brenskele brings up a question that I know we have grappled with for years and years, and there's no answer that is simple to this. She wonders how do you separate both in the spec sheets and also as you classify things in OBIS through Darwin Core or in GBIF, what is a fish and what is zooplankton, for example, because sometimes they're both. And so this is an issue. How do you deal with that, Elizabeth?
That's a great question. I know we're in the process of developing like labels and tags and using the EOVs as keywords at the dataset level. So in the case where it's both, maybe you would use both keywords. I'm not an expert on taxonomy, so I'm not exactly sure what kind of qualifications, but it's definitely a really good thing to think about.
Yeah, I think as long as you put it with one label or the other, I think in general it'll work. But it's clear. I mean, when a fish is very small, or even a whale, if a whale is just sitting there and being carried around by the current, it's plankton. So it's not a simple thing to. But do the best you can as you classify.
Yeah. If I may say, the specification sheets for each EOV is giving a definition of what the EOV is. So it's more up to you as the observer. If you're working on fish larvae only, and obviously they will fall probably into two categories, to make sure that your data is identified for both EOVs. But you can also read the specification sheets and I don't know, make comments there if you think it's not clearly defined or it needs more clarification. And I think, yeah, the specification sheet will be the best way to make sure that all these things are considered. And in most of the time they are, like people have thought about that already.
Yeah, I also add that when you're like preparing your spreadsheets and your data, there's a column for like life stage, and some of this extra information that can be provided that will really, and then life stage uses a set of controlled vocabulary terms to be populated. And so using these can also supplement and make sure that we understand what exactly that piece of data is relating to, and then can also help for querying. You can just get all of the larval fish, for example.
Yeah, we're going to run out of time here. We're going to close the meeting in about 3 minutes, but Brian Melsian asked if the slides will be available. I think that typically the recording is available. We need to make sure that the speakers are okay with sharing their slides, and then Joanna can, and maybe GOOS can also. So Joanna can share them through the MBON webpage, and Brian, if you can write us, we can also maybe get a copy to you directly. Would be very good if the EPA in the US uses these, and if you can basically train people at the EPA on these concepts. And then Syed Shafiei asks, what about soundscapes? And I know that there's many ways. There's actually a sound EOV, an ocean sound EOV, but there's also a way to capture environmental data, including sounds, as part of the Darwin Core format. Elizabeth, if you want to talk about, and Audrey.
Yes, so you can include derived information like from soundscapes. At the moment, you can't attach like the raw sound file with your biological data in the Darwin Core. But if you have the soundscape information uploaded somewhere else, you can include links to this as like associated media, so it can be included alongside your collected data.
Yeah, well,
Any
I don't
final
have.
comment? Yeah.
No. I don't really know the ocean sound EOV. Like that's not the one I'm most familiar with. But yes, I guess they already thought about that, and it's also in the specification sheet. If it's not, please suggest anything you see fit. It's the moment to go and do it. So please do it.
Yes, we have a minute or so. Do you want to give a final parting thought, Audrey, and then Elizabeth?
Yeah, well, the reason why we're having this webinar is mainly, well, I'm not going to bring it to me, but when I joined at the beginning of the year as the new co-chair, I realized that, well, not only I had a very limited knowledge of GOOS and what it was doing and the amazing work that was happening for several decades now, because it was just about to be launched for BioEco panel. So they had been working in the shadow and it was getting public at the moment I joined. But also I noticed that people in my surroundings, in my lab or in my country were not aware of that so much. So I think what would be very, very useful for reaching the level of having a real global observing system, it would be for you to, I mean, we're going to share the slides and the video, and if you guys can, I don't know, if you like it, adopt it and communicate about it, and making sure that everybody help us develop the best specification sheets before the end of the summer, but also make sure that they're widespread, that the use is widespread across the world. I think it would be really, really cool and making things advance, especially with regard to the facts of integrating the physics, the biochemistry, and the biology and ecosystem EOVs.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll echo what I said in yesterday's session. Really, like, do your best to make your data completely fair. Think about each of the 4 aspects of fair. I think especially the interoperable part, because that's really what makes a global ocean observing system work. And we know that it can be intimidating, and so there is help. There's a whole community. OBIS is a whole community, so is GOOS. And if you just don't know where to start, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Yeah, we're here for you.
Well, thank you very much, both of you, Audrey and Elizabeth, for your talks. This was very good and informative. I also want to thank the Air Center Caterina Paez and Joanna Suarez for organizing this as part of the Marine Biodiversity Observation Network, and of course GOOS and everybody else that participated. Please remember that this is the first of a series of seminars, and Joanna posted the link to register for the next few series. So we're going to dive deeper and deeper into each of the EOVs and EBVs as we go along for the rest of the year. So thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I want to thank you, Joanna, for
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
No,
it was
I have to
great.
thank you. It was